Just within 1 minute, just a minute, because I'm having trouble admitting guys in. It's kind of obstructing me. So just a minute. I'm admitting some few guys here. I've just realized that there's no option for setting a co-host for this who will be helping me to moderate the attendance. So let me just accept in some few guys, then we begin. And as we do that, we can just have an interaction on the chat section, probably just mentioning your name and probably also whether I'm audible or not. I'll be turning off the microphones for now, but I'll turn them on. I'll turn them on in like when you reach the session where we have to have some Q&A. So just forgive me for the few first minutes because I'll be presenting some few things. What I want is for this to be a very interactive session. So I wouldn't want anybody misbehaving with the microphone if I turn them on. So I hope everybody will be cooperating in that. Yeah, so you can see we have Zach. Zach is saying he's a backend dev Django, unemployed though. So, if you write code, you're already employed, my friend. So you can also confirm whether I'm audible also on the chat section, please. Okay, so I think we can begin with a few confirmations that I'm audible on the chat section. So good evening, everyone, and welcome again to this session. I want to thank everybody for making their time to attend. 78 participants at this moment, and also many of them are still coming in. It's a pleasure actually. So right off, I'm Rizwan. For those who maybe have not interacted with me, I'm a full stack software developer as well as a startup founder. Not a startup as such because it's kind of some indie hacking stuff. So I'm also a founder for some two very incredible startups. So in this session, I'm inviting you to discuss about the M-PESA integration. This is a topic that I did a session on sometimes last year. And from that also, I came to realize that it's still not that clear to many of developers, being that is a very crucial part of development. Many of these clients that you guys get, many of these softwares that develop in one way or another, they need payments to be integrated in. And since that we are in Kenya, the first option that you go to is M-PESA integration. So it's a very crucial API for almost every developer in this country to understand well and be able to integrate it with ease actually. Because you might be able to integrate, yes, but again, after a month or two, you need to integrate it again. And you're like, I really don't know how it worked. It worked, yes, but maybe probably I got some code from somewhere, this and that. So in this session, it will be kind of an eye opener where we'll discuss a lot of things concerning that API. And for those who maybe have questions in, they've tried to integrate this thing into the applications and have come through some or have been blocked by some things, you can share those things so that we can at least try to dilute them and see where maybe you were going wrong so that somebody else in this audience might not face such kind of a problem again. Yeah, so without further ado, let me just share my screen so that we can begin. You guys can also confirm on the chat section if my screen will be visible. Okay, thank you. So right away, we begin with our session. Fred, if you're in the audience, you'll kindly help me with the questions that will be coming in from the chat section, as well as any concern that will be raised.
Yani niko kwa session nyingine important, network ndio imepotea. Eish. Ha? Si ime umeweka sahi. Yani kama nini, si 1 hour maybe iliisha.
Safaricom, it's very crucial to understand what they expose to us, because you might be facing a problem that maybe it's not exposed by the API itself. You might want to integrate a certain feature that the M-PESA API is not able to provide for you. So it's good to understand what is available for you from this API, because the textbook definition for APIs, it's application programming interfaces. So it's a way for these computers to communicate to each other, different parts of that software to communicate. So they must understand the language of each other. So you must know what's available from the other side for you to know what they need for them to provide you with that information. You'll also find time to go through kind of a very simple code walkthrough of how you can integrate this API to your applications. We'll also discuss some few security features, because if you're dealing with money here, so it's very crucial for you to understand the vulnerabilities that come with integrating M-Pesa, and how you can try as much as you can to curb some of those threats. So we'll also discuss about how you can handle offline payments, that is to do with the C2B API. You'll also see about how you can go about integrating business to customer APIs, and also some that you've been facing as you integrate this API into your applications. Now, for reference, we'll be using documentation. Uh, we'll be using the official Daraja documentation, as much as some of you guys say it's kind of shitty, or it's not well structured, but it's the core of how all these other documentations come to be. We still reference from it so that we can build a better version of it. Then we'll also look at this documentation that I wrote sometimes last year when I was presenting the first session at Specia Tech. It's also going to be one of our main reference. Then there's this other documentation that I wrote like 2 weeks ago that helps the Next.js developers to integrate the applications through to integrate M-PESA to their Next.js applications. And this it's very important because it has a lot of details that were left out in the first documentation of the M-PESA docs.facel.app, because the other documentation was more of the back-end side of things. But since that Next.js handles it as a full stack thing, you'll also understand the front-end side of things because it's an end-to-end application kind of. Yeah, so I think with that we can get started. So the first thing that we are to discuss is the pay bill or TIN number application. Which one is best for integrating, and what's the process be? What's the process of applying for these things? Yeah, so depending on your use case, whether you need a pay bill or a till, it's something that I stated clearly in the documentations that I provided. So if we go through one of these, uh, you guys will also tell me whether you're a fan of dark mode or light mode. But for the sake of this, let me just switch it back to light mode. Yeah, so if you need a detailed understanding on how to apply for a till or a pay bill, as well as which one do you need between a till and a pay bill, I think this documentation provides a better of understanding for that. For me, I can say the last time we had this session, I told you guys that yeah,
Apekutumia.
applying for a pay bill is better. And I
Nini
gave my reasons, being that it gives you kind of,
auro
it
screenshot
has all
moko
the
mar
abilities that a
screen
till can perform,
mar gine kanyo.
whereas a
Mar
till will be
OBS.
limited if you need to scale your application.
Aneno ko oko display ginene the video that is being presented. Aneno man ko record audio.
Find that the till number, the only source of truth for till number is the phone number
Angalia kwa
that that
group
person
hiyo ya
is using,
mentalist content.
because they don't have an account number to lend.
Aya.
So you find that handling such payments,
Kwa
handling
group.
offline payments with a till becomes
Hello?
very hectic.
Hello?
Pay bill, you can just do a short case,
Umeona
set
hiyo
the
screenshot
details of your
nimekutumia?
customer, give them kind of a unique identifier that
Nakuuliza
they'll
umeona
be
hiyo screenshot
using
nimetuma?
making the purchases, or
Hapa
they are
nafaa kufanya
paying
aje
to that pay bill, so that when the
ndio nini
when
itoke?
the response or the callback is brought to your URLs that you
Hii screen
registered,
ya
you can
Rizwan.
identify them with the clients and save the right data, instead of you just saving the hashed keys that don't kind
OBS,
of
hii ni
bring any
OBS.
value to your data. So in terms of
Hapana,
the requirements that are
hii ni
needed,
third party, hii ni third party
I
recording
provided
audio.
some of the requirements here, but it's good to go with the official documentation. So if you need to understand about how to apply for these pay bills, I think Safaricom provided a portal whereby you can apply digitally. I remember it was better to apply using an email, because the, the the
Window.
the portal that was available before this year
So
was kind of
imesema imenini from source
it
ama
wasn't that
inafaa kuwa window.
efficient. That's why it was better to just bring your documents together and just send them
Inafaa kuwa
to
window
multiple
si
emails.
browser.
If you have somebody working in the inside, it's also appropriate, because they'll receive it in hand. But now there is a portal that is there, and I've tried using it. It's kind of well organized. So if you need to apply for a till or a pay bill, I think you'll visit this portal, M underscore, this should be a hyphen, pesa for business.co.ke.
Kuna nini nafaa kuweka?
So if you
Kuna
come to apply now,
link ingine nafaa kuweka.
you'll find the various
Ile OBS
options.
nishaweka.
You'll find the various options that are available. So you can apply for a business till. You can also apply for a business one account. Let me just finish with this two, then I'll go back to this. Then you can also apply for a short-term pay bill. So let's say you have a fundraiser, or you have a
Acha
medical
niandike
bill to
down.
pay, education, something that is very short term. So you can apply for this short term pay bill. You'll provide what they need. They'll give you a pay bill that you can use for that particular scenario that you having right at that moment. Then the bulk payment, this is the business to customer. You remember when we needed to integrate payments earlier before the business one account, we were supposed to apply for a C2B pay bill. Then if you also need to do disbursement from your application, you'd also need to apply for a B2C pay bill. And these two are working independent of each other. So if you need to transfer the money, it was another hectic problem. But now there is now the business one account. So this, I think it's here because we have people who are still using the C2B pay bills, many of them, including me. So you might want to apply for a B2C, because if you come to apply for the business on account, now if I explain the business on account, it's just a combined pay bill that allows you to accept payment as well as disburse payments. So they have given an explanation here. Business on account combines the pay bill and disbursement capabilities, enabling organizations and businesses to receive payments from customers and also pay out individual customers using M-PESA numbers and stuff. Yeah, so if right now you're looking to apply for a pay bill, the business one account is better. You might not be having the need for a bulk payment or disbursing of money, but in the long run, it's better to have this because you'll be on a safer side if you need to scale up and start making integrations that will require you to send money from your application to users or to customers. So when you come to apply for this, you'll find that they give out options, and the requirements that I listed on my documentation are also here, and these ones provide at least a detailed one. So these are the requirements that are needed for you to apply for that pay bill. You'll check and start collecting them one after the other, combine them together, and do the application right from this portal. If you apply, this is what happens. I don't know where it is, but they give you an option when you're applying for a business one account. They give you an option for if you're applying for a new pay bill, that is you're applying for something that is fresh, or you had a C2B pay bill and you need to upgrade it to become a one account, of which I don't think if it's working. I've tried to apply for some two guys, but it kind of the system does not recognize some pay bills that were given out before a certain period. So they'll tell you reapply for a new pay bill again. That is now you'll have to get a new name and stuff and stuff. Yeah. So if you find that you're having trouble applying for this on account, it's just a normal scenario where we have pay bills that were registered back there that cannot be applied to this business one account. So that's with the application process. So the next thing is APIs that are available. So Safaricom was kind enough to provide us a lot of APIs. Actually, there are very many. Others have just left about them that they never tried them. Yeah, but the most common ones are these that we're going to be discussing here. So we have the authorization API. I think I should open the Daraja portal so that we can look at them. Developers. Yeah. So one of the problems I think this is the you need to process proper documentation. That's the first thing that maybe turns a lot of people off. So if I come to APIs, you'll find that all these APIs that are available, you can use them in your application. The first one and the most crucial one is the authorization API, because this is what allows all these to integrate any of these others without understanding the authorization API. This is the API that allows you, as much as you've been given the keys to interact with the other APIs, you'll need to provide some extra security before interacting with the other APIs. So this API allows you to authorize and authenticate when you're making the other requests. So you find that for you to make a certain request, say to the dynamic QR code API, you need to call the authorization API, get the proper authentication, then now call the other dynamic API. Important API to understand. Dynamic QR code, which I haven't found myself using it, but I believe it's just kind of a wrapper where instead of initiating a payment through the SDK push or through the manual SDK, the phone SDK, they generate a dynamic QR code where when you scan that QR code, it gets the data from the QR and initiates that transaction where the user will now have to confirm still. Then we have the customer to business API. So you should be very clear with this, because many of the people get stuck when integrating this API because they kind of don't understand which one are they using. That's why I tend to refer to the customer to business API as accepting online payments. That's accept online payments. It's kind of better to understand when I call it an offline payment. So this allows you to register URLs so that a payment is made anywhere offline. When I go to my M-PESA app or my M-PESA SDK toolkit, I pay to a certain pay bill. This API allows you, or it provides a way whereby you register some URLs, and any payment that is made to that pay bill, Safaricom will send a callback data to that, a webhook kind of, to that URL that you registered initially. You can use it to simulate a transaction. That will now bring about the idea of SDK push. So but if you need to only handle online payments, the appropriate one, because you find you'll have to use it for multiple websites. You can't use it for multiple systems because you'll register for one URL, not unless you have one endpoint that you handle for multiple systems. So for online payments, it's better off to use the M-PESA Express. So I refer to it as SDK push. Look at this action button. For all these you have one, but for the M-PESA Express you have two. And here is where many people more so with this transaction status. So they find that there's a behavior that when you pay for a certain to a certain website, it kind of checks the real-time transaction for that push that has been sent to the phone for you to display a good feedback to the user. So if you look at it that way, you will think that it's the transaction status API that is being called. But this is what happens. We have two APIs that are provided by the M-PESA Express. We have one to simulate. To simulate a transaction is basically sending the SDK push to the user's phone. Now, the query that allows us to have the SDK push that. So when you run the SDK push, the response that comes back, it comes back with some data that will help you now identify that, so you can query for it. So you can ask Safaricom, what is the status of this SDK push that was sent? I'm using the word status, and that's where the confusion comes. You might think that is the get a whole week struggling with interacting with the transaction status API, only to find out that that's not what you intended to do. Yeah. So as we go to the code walkthrough, I think I'll explain more about the simulating an SDK push as well as the SDK push query. There are two ways that we need to understand. Or is the business to customer, the B2C API, that's also dependent on the authorization. Is the request, then use session keys that will be provided here to send a request to the B2C API to now initiate that request. Then there's this one that is the business buy goods. The B2B API that it didn't. I don't know now. I have never tried it since I was like 3 years ago. That it was not working. It was face sans. But now, if you look at market, like let's say yes, then to in Intersect where if you guys have a way in which you can pay other pay bills or pay other till numbers. Find some time next week to try, but I believe this is what they use. This API enables you to pay from your business account to a till number, number or a month. So this is what has replaced, but it's one of the reasons why this documentation is kind. But the API that I believe it is used to disperse money from your pay bill to other customers. Yeah, so those are the APIs that we'll be looking at today. The other ones you can find time on your own to look at them if your need is on that. Yeah. Okay, the next thing is the SDK code walkthrough. So I think with this, because of time, I won't be able to like do a hands-on thing that I had planned to do, but I'll
Eh.
just sending out the SDK push and also querying for that SDK push to show the relevant feedback to your users. The same walkthrough is available here. So if you look at this documentation that allows us to integrate M-PESA APIs to our Next.js applications. Now, when I was sending out the poster for this session, many people were asking me, which technology are you going to use in that session? And my answer to them was, M-PESA integration is not about the stack that you use. It's not about the integration that you're using, not about the
It's not
code that you're
easy.
writing. It's about you understanding the flow because
Pardon.
trust me, M-Pesa is the most basic API that you need to understand. It provides a very simple REST infrastructure. It's just request and response. So provided you can send a request in whatever language, you can receive a response in whatever language. It doesn't matter. So you can follow up a tutorial on how to integrate in Node.js and still be able to integrate it in a Python project, a PHP project, and all those other projects and the code bases the code that you guys write. So me using Next.js does not mean that this session is for integrating M-Pesa into Next.js applications. This walkthrough will be very crucial for you to understand on how you can integrate the same into many other languages and tech stacks. So setting up the project, very basic. I'll just be I'll just look at the project structure that we'll be using. I think it will be better off if I open the a code base itself rather than this. Just a minute. As I do that, maybe I'll open the mic for those people who are having questions. Dark mode, please. Okay, that looks kind of ugly. Oh, so you guys are fan of dark mode? Hey. Okay. Hmm.
Mehe mehe is not mehe mehe. Mm.
So the mics are open. So anybody who has a question up to that point, I think you can address it. It's better off if you address questions as we go so that we don't leave some other people behind, or maybe if you don't understood at a certain concept, then we leave it up to the end, becomes a problem. Yeah, we have Mohammed Rashid, I think. Yeah. So Mohammed Rashid, you can just unmute and go ahead.
So, hello everyone.
Hi, hi.
Rizwan, I was asking, like, in M-Pesa, can you handle, let's say I have a seller
Let me
and a
just say that
client
again.
in a marketplace. Can they interact directly?
That as a baby,
Come
you're
again.
doing too much.
Like, it's a
Because
marketplace.
you're a
I
baby.
do have sellers and I do have clients. So, is there a way for them to
You're a
interact
baby, right?
one-on-one? Like, a seller can, like,
Communicate.
a buyer, yeah?
I'm getting you. Continue.
Yeah. So can a buyer initiate a transaction directly to his seller?
That depends with your application logic. If you mean initiate transaction to their seller, what exactly? Do you mean the structure of how the point of sales work? Ama?
No, like,
Where
because what I'm looking I'm seeing from the M-Pesa API is you do have B2C, B2B. Like, for this case, it's two people interacting. Like it's a platform. I don't have
Yes.
to manage their money. It's for
Uh-huh.
them to work to initiate the transaction on themselves. So does the M-PESA API allows that?
Your application logic allows that.
Okay.
Maybe if I help you think, although it's kind of insecure, you can allow them to save their keys, their credentials, and as they're making those transactions, go to where you save those credentials against those users and use specific credentials for specific users. So it will be like you're creating a kind of a headless thing that you'll be using to initiate a lot of M-Pesa transactions using the same code base, but the keys will be changing. It's kind of just changing the variables there.
person. Do you know that?
Okay.
And I'll beat you, man.
So that's your application logic. That's nothing to do with the M-Pesa APIs that are provided.
Like and let's say I'm using the M-PESA as the medium. Like what API should I be targeting?
What do you intend to achieve? Payment, initiating payments.
Yeah, initiating payments.
So you should be concerned with M-Pesa Express if it's online payments, and the C2B API for offline payments.
Man, is not man.
Those are
Okay,
my questions.
so let me just zoom in a little bit. Yeah, so this is an integration that integrates M-Pesa to a Next.js application. So I'll just go through the steps that you can use to integrate this. Uh, let's just start from the initial
Just
page.
just before you continue, I
Yes,
wanted to. Hi, how are you doing?
I'm good. I'm good.
Yeah, I wanted to inquire. Okay, I've seen about the express one, but I was interested in the C2B. Are there like any specific considerations for supporting multiple currencies in transactions?
Okay. So I think I'll get back to your question. Let me just proceed with the session. I'll just turn off the mic for the moment as you go through the code. Okay, so these are basic implementation that I use to integrate this. The hell is this thing? So there's a live demo on this documentation. That's the code that I've opened is for this live demo where it allows you to enter the name, the M-Pesa number, and the amount. Then you can proceed with payment. So visually, what is happening here is it's now calling the first endpoint that was called. Let me just cancel this transaction, then start all over. Okay. Now, this button will call the M-Pesa Express API, the one that initiates an SDK push. So immediately I hit that endpoint. So immediately I hit that endpoint, there is now another API that is being called to poll for that transaction or to kind of check the status of that transaction that has been sent to my phone as an SDK push. So if it happens that I cancel, the request that will go to that endpoint will tell me that the user has canceled that request. It will give me immediate feedback. So for that, these are two APIs combined, not one. This is this API that is provided here. If I go back to the Daraja portal here. This is the simulate that is in the M-Pesa Express, and there's this query that is here. So The rest that goes on here is still application logic. So that's why I say it's better for you to understand this API itself, the infrastructure, rather than focusing more on getting resources, the code base and stuff, because you might visually look at a certain implementation and fail to understand what exactly is happening. So you might initiate the payment, then start checking for the transaction status API, which is not the one that we're using in this implementation here. So if I show you briefly of how that happened is, if I open up so this is the handle submit function that the button was calling. What it does after validating whatever is there, it sends a request to this. It's a server action. I'll open this up also. Just open it on the side. So you can see what is happening here. This request that is here is being sent to this endpoint, this server action, the send SDK push, which it takes the details that have been received and it sends them to this endpoint first. The endpoint to get credentials, the authorization API. So the authorization API will give us back a token. So the implementation of this also depends with your own application logic, because I have done it this way. I'm calling the first API, waiting for it, getting back the token, then calling the second API. You might want to make this as a middleware, whereby all requests that are going to any M-PESA payment will still pass through that middleware, which will be generating the token first, then passing the token to the second handler. You might also want to generate the token once, save it somewhere, let's say on Redis for a period, because for me, I'm generating it each time, but it takes like, I think some few seconds before it expires, no more than a minute. So it's kind of not useless, but depending on the depending on the level of the application that you're building and the, what do you call them, the optimization that you might want to do, maybe those 2 seconds or that 1 minute is a lot for you to make unnecessary requests, yet the token has not changed. That's why you can decide to generate the token once, save it somewhere. Whenever you're making a request to Safaricom, you'll check for the token first, whether it's there and it's not expired. Use the same. If it's expired, call that API again, generate the token, then pass it to the second API. So this is the code that generates that token. Then now the second one, here it is. After getting the token, I'm now sending the request to this process request that is the now simulate the SDK push query, the M-PESA Express simulation. So it sends the request to this that now handles the SDK push alone. So you might send the SDK push and wonder, why is it that the SDK push is still on the user's phone and I'm getting a success? Because this API intends to do that in particular, just sending the request. So if any error occurs, it's an error that the SDK push has not been able to be sent to that user for some particular reasons, being that maybe the authorization that you're passing here is incorrect, or one of the parameters of this body are also incorrect. So we'll just briefly look at the parameters that are here, and I'll need you guys to be very attentive on this, because I'll be sharing some controversial tricks that you can use here, because I've said that you can use one pay bill, assuming you're using a pay bill, for multiple systems, right? Yeah. So I'll be sharing how maybe I use that, because personally I have like 3 pay bills with like almost 15 projects that I use, and they don't collide in any way because they're online payments and they have a dynamic callback URL. So the first parameter that you sent here is the business shortcode. I'll be rushing through this because all this is provided in the documentation, and my contacts are also there. So if you need to a detailed thing, I think you'll find me. For now, I'll just be rushing through these parameters. So the business shortcode is simply the pay bill number. But remember, we have integrations for a till number and a pay bill number. So if you're integrating a pay bill number the shortcode, the business shortcode will be the pay bill number itself. But if you're integrating for a till number, remember you'll be provided with two things when you apply for a till number. You have the store number and you have the till number itself. So the business shortcode here, if you're using a till number, will be the store number. But for a pay bill, it's just the normal pay bill number. Then the password is generated out here, just some security measures. So you can go through the documentation also to understand how this password is generated in different languages. The first documentation that I did last year, I think it has provision for Python, PHP, and Node.js. The timestamp also, you can go through how the process of generating the real-time timestamp. Now, the other thing that you should be important and very attentive in is the transaction type. So remember, we have a pay bill and a tier also. So if you're using a pay bill, the transaction types becomes customer pay bill online. I believe this should be camel case, or is it? You can just confirm with me on the chat section. Is this Pascal or camel? Because all the initial letters of each word are in capital, including the first word. So customer pay bill online. If you're using a till number, here it will be customer buy goods online. The other variable that changes also is up here, the base URL that you're using. If you are on Sandbox, you'll be using API. That's why this is what I did. Now, on the common mistakes that people do, because I'll be rushing through this, I think I'll be just stating some of them, is they have a code base that handles a lot of APIs and they test on Sandbox. Then they change to production, they get the live credentials, then they forget to change some of the APIs. So it's better to save them somewhere. So you can see here, I just saved the M-PESA environment in my environment variable. So I just check if it's a live environment. So I'll just be changing that one particular place, and these APIs will be rendered dynamically. So if you're using Sandbox, it's sandbox.safaricom.co.ke. If you're using the live one, it's api.that. So let's continue with this. The amount is the amount. The party A is the phone number. There's this habit of going to a website and you find that somebody is forcing you to start with a 07, somebody is forcing you to start with a +254, somebody is forcing you to start with a 254. Okay, the format that is needed is +254, yes, but let me just confirm with, yeah, no, it's not plus, it's just 254, then the digits. But you know that you can just normalize that because you know they can enter all the three. So allow them to enter any that they want, then get the phone number they've entered. You know that the 8 digits, the 8 last digits will be the real digits. Just get the 8 digits, then replace them with the 254, the first 3 digits with the 254, so that you don't get a bad user experience of forcing people to start with a certain particular format. Now the party A is the phone number. The phone number is also the phone number. I'm yet to understand why, unless I start manipulating these things, but the party A is the phone number, and the phone number is also the phone number that is used. Now, the party B, here is where the juicy part is. Remember we talked about a till and a pay bill. So if you're using a till number, this is straightforward. Basically, shortcode, use the till number, use the store number. Party B, use the till number itself. But now if you're using a pay bill number, the shortcode will be the pay bill number itself. The party B will still be the pay bill number itself. But literally, technically, party B should be where the money should go. Business shortcode should be the code that is linked to your Daraja account, that you went live with. I don't know if you guys are getting me right. So the party B should not necessarily be the code that you went live with. Most of you who have interacted with my applications find that I initiate a payment, then the money goes to my KCB bank account or my I&M bank account. Somebody comes to my inbox, help me integrate the Boonie KCB API that you used. I never used any Boonie API. I never used any bank API. What I did is I initiated the payment, then sent the money to my bank pay bill through the normal bank process, because a bank provides you with a pay bill and an account number. So if I enter the pay bill here and the account number here, basically this is a simulating. That's why they called it simulate. It's just doing what you will have done on your phone. So if you deposit to your bank by entering a certain code on your business number and a certain code in the account number to deposit money to your bank, the same thing you can do when you're simulating using this API. You can enter that bank pay bill number here and that bank account number here, and the same process that would have been done manually will be done with this API. For those who have interacted with Lipia online, it's one of the things that I was building some times back. That's the logic that it's using. For those who have interacted with something like TinyPesa, that's exactly the logic that is being used. They just dynamically render these three things. One, the transaction type. Two, the party B. Three, the account reference number. So if you are using a till number, they'll dynamically render this to use this. If you're using they'll then put the till number here, then that's done. If you are using a bank account, they'll just save the bank account shortcodes because they're available online. They'll save them somewhere in their database. They replace, if you said KCB, they replace this part with the KCB bank paybill. Then they'll replace the account number that you gave them here. So that's why you find the habit of the SDK push shows different organization. The money goes to a different organization. It's just a matter of playing around with these variables that are here. Yeah, that's all. So the authorization API to send, to get the token, the M-PESA SDK push API, the process request to send the SDK push. So to this point, what has happened is an SDK push has been sent to users, and the response is successful up to there. But if you look at the visualization that you looked at, there's another process that is going on. If I come back here now, after this request is successful, so if there's an error, I'll just return from here. But if it was successful, now I'll go ahead and do the query. So SDK push query with intervals. I've called this function so that it can become clear, because this code base is available on my GitHub account. So if you go there, you'll find it there. So it's easier for you to understand. So I'll call this other function, the SDK push query with intervals, and I'll take in the checkout request ID that comes back after this SDK push has been sent. Now, using that, this again is your own application logic. It's not anywhere lied or tied to the Daraja API. That's why I normally say you may be facing problems, but the problems that you're facing are not in any chance. No one kuambia, oh, Daraja is this, Daraja is that. It's not Daraja. It's your own application logic. It's you who have not understood what exactly you're trying to do and how exactly you can achieve it. So I tend to use short polling, where I kind of use a recursive way of calling the same function until I get a desired outcome. That is, until I get whether the payment has been paid or not. Again, you can also decide to set up webhooks where you'll be calling this API from your backend, and if anything is successful, send back a connection to your front end and display the right UI. But I think this is easier because it's not a long-term thing, because it's a USSD call that has a lifetime of like 90 seconds. So within 90 seconds, if this person hasn't paid, they'll be told that the DNS user is not found or something. So what I do here is just use the set interval. I set a timer, starts at 1. Then it has some few edge cases or some few things that you have to look at. Number 1, I can't be calling that API forever, so I'll be increasing. I'll be calling each time I call the API. I'll be increasing this count here. So if the count is greater than 15, I'll say this person took too long to pay. This will be 2 seconds times 15. That means that's 30 seconds. So if this person has not paid within 30 seconds, then I'll time out that transaction. That's the first instance, or the first case scenario. Now, after that, I'll now send this SDK push query. Now this is a different request. Up to now, this is a third API that we are interacting with. So if I go to this, let me just go to this from here, the SDK push query. Again, what this does is it sends a request to the authorization API to get back the token. That's why I say all these APIs depend on this one other API. So it will get the token, then call now the SDK query. SDK push query API provided by Safaricom still that it takes shorter parameters, the business shortcode, the normal one, for a pay bill, the pay bill number, for a till number, the store number, the password generated from this code here. I've explained it in the documentations. The timestamp the same. The checkout request ID is the checkout request ID provided from the successful SDK push request. The token is the token that was provided from the first request for generating the token. So this will now give you three responses, three possible responses. And it's very important to understand them because these three responses are the ones that you'll be using to kind of tweak this logic that you're using here. So the first thing is it might return this error code, 500.001.d than this. Now this error code states that's why there's a guy who came to my inbox and told me your application has an error and you've not handled it. It's not me. It's how Safaricom designed that API. It gives me an error when the process is being processed, when the SDK push is still on the user's phone, they have not interacted with it. So if I handle it, that means that I'll be giving false data to my UI. So that's the first case that I handle normally. If there's an error, and the error is not this, because if the error is this, that means that I have no use with this. Continue checking because the process is still being, the transaction is still being processed. So if it's not this, then I'll handle it. If it's this, let it just throw the log errors. Yeah, it will show some red things, but just ignore them because it's not a bug, it's a feature, actually. Yeah, so if the error is a different error, apart from this, means that there's something that has happened. Either they have canceled, they took too long to pay, they have entered the wrong PIN, whatever. So that will come back in the error response. The error message will be given there. So that's the error message that we see in this implementation, this exact one. So if you open the debug console for this, you'll find that as this page is here, you'll see a bunch of errors that are logged out. That is the feature that I say it's not a bug. But if I interact with this API and cancel, the next request will get request canceled by user. So this is the block that handles that. So if the request is not this, then the error, it's a real error. Something has happened to that SDK push. Now handle it however you want it to be handled, either updating the UI, showing a toast, feedback, closing a modal, whatever. Now, if there is no error, that means that our request was successful. And the results code is 0 for a success. Handle your success here. Otherwise, there is an error, that the error is not this. So probably now this here will be probably, this will probably be our application error. So there are two errors that are being handled here. There's this error that I'm handling here. This is our application error, sorry. Something has happened to your application. Maybe there's something wrong. But if it is now successful and the results code is something else other than 0, then that means that your API, your request to the SDK query API was successful, but the payment to the user's phone was not successful. I hope I'm not confusing some of you. The SDK push went, I'm trying to query, the query was successful, but I canceled the SDK push. So it will give me a success, but it will be having a result code of something else other than 0. So if you want to show the real thing, you can just do some trials and get the SDK, the results code, so that you can show your toast depending on exactly what happened. But I'm just basically using this because I believe the result description that is there, it's also kind of self-explanatory. If somebody doesn't pay, they'll tell you results cancelled by user. If they enter wrong pin, the initiator information is invalid. If the user is not free, the next user timed out, whatever. Yeah, so that's the logic that happens here. It's just an interval, set interval function that sends the request expecting to get a response, a successful response, and using the successful response, I'll check the results code. If it's anything other than 0, then something wrong happened with that transaction. But if it's a 0, then this person paid. If it's a 500.0.0, this code that is here, then the transaction is still being processed. So however you want to structure this function, it's upon you. If you write a recursive call that will be calling itself until you get your desired income, then stop or return that function, well and good. If you'll be using the short polling, also fine. If you'll be using a webhook or a connection, what do you call it? A WebSocket connection, it's also fine. But that's the basic logic, not specific to JavaScript, but that's specific to the integration of that API. Then the next thing that comes in is after the transaction is successful or it is failed, they come back now to the SDK push. We finalize with this one, the callback URL. So this is a webhook that you provide to Safaricom, telling them that whatever the outcome of that SDK push that I sent, get me clear, whatever the outcome that I sent, just send it here. So this URL expects all outcomes, successful or not successful. Different with the other APIs, the B2C, the C2B, those ones you only received a successful transaction in your callback. But for this, you receive both. So in the logic the logic that you're using to handle this, so if I give an example here, yeah. So number one, I'll check. There's this if block that is here that checks if there's callback metadata or if the results code is anything other than 0. You can use two things, either the result code or the callback metadata, because a successful transaction will come with this key. If it's not successful, this will not be there. So if it's not there, that means that it was not successful. You'll handle it however you'll want to handle it. If it reaches here, that means that it was a successful transaction. I'll just get the parameters that are there. We have the amount. We have the phone number is not helpful nowadays. So you can just decide to get the phone number from your front end. And again, this is just but a URL. This Safaricom will just hit that URL, however the structure it is. That's very important. Very, very important, because remember, at the structure of a URL, we have parameters and search queries. So if you need data in this callback URL that is coming from your logic application, say an order ID, you need to get it here. You can pass this thing from here, from the callback URL. So if I say, where is the SDK push? So if I say this is the callback URL, then I just provide a parameter here, search query, and I say order ID is equal to 2. I can get this from the callback, because Safaricom will just take this and dump that body there. So it doesn't remove anything from it. So you can just use this to save an order here, then pass it here, come back to your callback function here. Then if the transaction was not successful, you can update the order here. If it was successful, go ahead and update your order on this other side. The other thing is, why am I using finding objects by their names, not just an array? Because if you go through the previous documentations that I was writing prior to 2022, I think, we would just get the value from the array, because this is an array that comes in. But the problem with that is that when somebody pays through Fuliza, that array is kind of manipulated. They change the order. So if if you were confident that amount is array number 4 or the index number 4, and somebody pays through Fuliza, there's a value that is removed at array index 3, so it changes the indexes. So that's why it's better to just find the objects by the name, because these names haven't seen them changing, but the structure, the indexing of that array changes depending on the Fuliza payments. I had a very big problem with a client back then. Like, some of the guys are paying, they're not this and that, the callback fails, this and that. We only realized that because 3 people failed, 3 callbacks failed from 3 people, and all the 3 were using Fuliza. So that's why we kind of realized that was a problem by then. So if you might go through this code, it works, but you don't understand why it works, because you used my implementation, it is right, but it's until you go wrong somewhere, then you start investigating what's actually happening. Yeah, so up to this point, ikifika hapa, you can now handle it whatever you want to handle it, saving things to a database or do whatever you want to do. Now, when it comes to saving to a database, never, this is just a callback, and anybody can send a body here. So it's good to have some security measures. Number one, you can decide to whitelist some IPs. So before you even do any application logic here, just check. Okay, just check whether the IP address is this one that is provided by Safaricom. So I've given a list of IP addresses that you can check against in this documentation. Where is it? Handling callback. So if you come here, handling callback, yeah, this is what I was saying. Unaona hii item kwa hapa, it's an array. Kuna amount, M-PESA this, kuna hii balance, kuna transaction, date, and the phone number. On a phone number, it's array number, if it's 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. If somebody pays with Fuliza, this balance is not there. So phone number becomes index 0, 1, 2, 3. So if you used an indexing, then it breaks here. Okay. What else? I was saying about security, the whitelisted APIs. Yeah, hiyo ziko hapa hivi. Hizi sija test out. Sasa nimeanza ku test out moja baada nyingine hadi nikapata zote. These are provided directly from Safaricom. If you come here kwa Daraja docs, I think they're supposed to be somewhere here. That's why this documentation. I'm finding whitelist IP addresses. I go to documentation. I'll find them kwa going live. I don't know why. Mbona waliziweka kwa hii tabia going live actually. Sijui how. So here they are. So kuja hapa documentation going live, utapata hizo whitelisted IPs and stuff. Yeah. So again, your own application logic of how you'll handle your callbacks, just understanding the structure of how it works. What did I do here? Oh, pass this order. Just redo this. Yeah, so you can just pass query parameters here and get them back to your callback. I think that's the basic flow of integrating an SDK push to your web applications. That's the most basic flow. Just authorization API, M-PESA Express simulated API, authorization API again, M-PESA Express query API, handling the callback. Some cases when the callback does not reach, don't blame yourself. More so if you're using Sandbox, there's a lot of things that happen with Sandbox. That's why I don't normally prefer it. It's better for a developer to have their own pay bill. So with Sandboxes, sometimes they fail, mostly. With live pay bills, rarely, very rare. They don't blame them. They handle a very big load. But again, company with such a structure should not be having such problems. Yeah. And again, the documentation here is kind of, I'm not saying misleading, but there's a problem somewhere. The hell is this thing? Yeah, testing on localhost. So they state here clearly that you could use tunneling like ngrok and local tunnel, but somehow they block ngrok callbacks nowadays. So you use ngrok and still doesn't work. You deploy it and it works. So I don't know why they kind of flag this tunneling, the port tunneling logics and stuff. So you might have such an experience. Again, don't blame yourself. That's how it is. What else is remaining here? So the code walkthrough is done. I've touched on most of the security features. I think I've mentioned them. Number one, make sure your callback URL is a secret. Just save it somewhere on your env variable. Render that API as a dynamic API. The route that is as a dynamic route, so that becomes kind of secure when you push it to version controls. IP what listing, you can decide to do that. B2C, when you go to B2C, the security of B2C is B2C is very easy to implement because it's just authorizing and sending the request, but it's insecure, very less secure, because with STK push, there's two confirmations. STK push sent to the user, then the user enters their PIN. But with B2C, one, your code base is done. When you send the request, money goes out. So it comes with a lot of security risks. So when you're dealing with B2C, be very careful. Yeah, so the B2C allows us to accept offline payments by registering URLs that payments will be sent, payment notifications will be sent to those URLs. We have the validation URL that allows us to cancel out transaction beforehand. So this happens in very few seconds. When somebody tries to pay, Safaricom confirms with your validation URL. So this happens with maybe things like, I've seen this with Delight. When you enter a wrong account number, that payment will not be processed. So it hits their validation URL, they check whether this account number is true so that they don't handle reverses. So you accept wrong account numbers, then you start reversing to people money. So you can use the validation URL to do that. And the confirmation URL now handles the successful payments. Common problems, I think I've talked about them. Writing clean code, make sure you don't write your base URL everywhere. Just save it somewhere so that if you're changing from sandbox to live, just have one place in your code that you have to change. Number two, blaming Safaricom for what's not their problem. It's you. Something is not working, you start saying, oh, Daraja API, oh, Daraja API, this. Daraja API is just built on top of REST. Request response, enough. So if you're getting errors, then check on your code, check on the flow that you're following, what went wrong where. Napata I'm saying anapata tu error 400. Amekaa na error 400, 3 days. Oh, Daraja. Just because this guy is integrating Daraja. Oh, Daraja is this, or Daraja is this. Can't you just go back to your parameters that you're sending there? One of them is wrong. So it's about understanding what you're doing, understanding the whole REST API infrastructure, the error codes and stuff. So if I get this error code, where am I supposed to look? Only blame Daraja if you get 500. That's out of your reach. But you're getting anything within 400, just look at how you are implementing your things. The most common one is, I don't know how, but the sandbox credentials somehow expire. So if you're using Sandbox, you get errors. The first thing, just go create another app. It's free. Creating an app hapa kwa Daraja ni free. Mimi niko na sijui ngapi hapa. Kaifanyi, anza na kucreate ingine, tumia fresh credentials. Then now you'll know where to look if the error persists. The other thing is double entries in your callback. Safaricom retries when a callback is not reached or it does not return a response to them. There's something I've not shown you guys. Hapa kwa callback, mbona hapa? I ignore these things, but I don't ignore them as such. There's an error here, I just return a response to whatever response that, provided they get a response from you. If they don't, they'll retry that request. So utapata callbacks mbili at the same time. So it's just their own logic, which is good. Now, if you are connecting to an external database to save your things here, I got this problem when I was handling with MongoDB that was on Atlas. It takes some few seconds to connect. So unapata Safaricom wana assume haijafika, wanatuma ya pili. So before you save anything to your database, have some logic of checking whether the transaction was saved initially. If it was saved, ignore the second one. If it was not saved, then you can save it. I think that's all that I had for you guys. The very last thing is, rarely will you be needed to interact with this platform here. There's this portal, the merchant portal, that you use when you need to, for live guys now, if you need to get like if you need to create another initiators, because if you come to the B2C here, unapata kuna initiator name and initiator something. So those things you get them from this portal. I think kitambo kidogo ilikuwa hii hapa, hii ya Voda, sijui ni Vodafone ama nini, ilikuwa ina operate. It looks like this very old one. Walijaribu, nakumbuka kitambo, si kitambo, I'm not mimi si wa kitambo. 2020-2021, you needed to install a certificate, a digital certificate for you to access this portal. So wase wenye wanatumia Mac OS na nani, it was working on some specific browsers. Then they changed that you could access this portal from anywhere. They have now changed to a kind of a smarter one. Ni gani? M-PESA business something. Pay dot yeah, it's this one. Yeah, so I'm change kwa hii. Naona inakaa smart. Let me just log in. Muone. There's nothing you can do here because it has a lot of OTPs kila dakika. Naona vile inakaa 95. No, so here it will list all your shortcodes. So I have one here for one of my failed startups, Limo Express. I use this for testing every time. Then there's two, the utility account and the working account. You'll interact with them when you're dealing with B2Cs because one of the accounts holds the money. The other account is available to disburse the money. You have a lot of things that you can do with this portal. It's very clean right now, very good. They've done a very good job with this. Yeah. So if in some way you need to create an organization portal, I don't know, operator, business operator, stuff, you'll get them from this portal. What's remaining here? I think we're done. So let me invite questions. Don't trust me with difficult questions, please. In case there are any, that is. I'll just open up the mic and Fred will also help me if there are any questions on the chat. We'll address them. Yeah, CodeStar Technologies, karibu bwana. I see your hand raised. Yeah, Eric Kialo.
Yeah, nakusikia.
I saw you raised your hand, so you can just go ahead.
Umenipata?
Yeah, nakusikia vizuri.
Okay, thank you, and I'd like first of all to appreciate kazi yako safi. You know, it's very hard to get someone who can do this kind of work. Rarely we share, we as developers, but wewe umejitolea, at least ukashare all that knowledge just for free, which is good.
Thank you.
I've got some few stuff maybe to add, but there is a question which I wanted to ask you.
Okay, go ahead.
Kama umepatana na hiyo challenge, because I've been in the, unajua tu kwa industry for years.
Kabisa.
So there are these pay bills like the ones that are used, because I normally feel like when you apply for pay bill, kuna different types of pay bill. Kuna pay bill normal zenye tunatumianga, alafu kuna ni kama Safaricom, they normally categorize them differently. Like for example, ukiangalia KPLC. KPLC, when you make payments, you normally make the payment, KPLC wanga inapata hiyo message, alafu I think it normally shares the message. Safaricom shares the message with the nini after processing the payment in a share with KPLC so that you can get the message. But now remember, it's not like your meter is tied to your phone number. You can pay from any phone number. So do you normally find it just, or maybe you have a know-how of how this one works? Because the meter is supposed to, assuming like the KPLC have the data, which is for the
Yeah, I
phone
get
number
you.
plus the meter.
I get you
Yeah.
exactly.
But in this case,
Yeah.
you can buy using any number. So due to data protection acts and so forth, I normally feel like kuna different special kind of pay
Yeah.
bills which are provided for that.
No. Okay. This what happens is, remember when they were
Yes.
enrolling the data protection thing, they started.
Yeah.
Then they sent a message that due to some companies, this and this, they stopped that, right? And
Yes.
that was the problem. We had companies that their logic was fully dependent on that phone number. So
Oh.
enrolling that, so I think it's kind of some bureaucracy and some.
So it
Okay.
means for the some of the old companies, it was not blocked. Like a PLC, it's allowed to
Yeah.
still
Yeah.
use the same method. But when it
Yeah.
comes
I think
to
they
if you
what they did. I
yes.
think from what I get is it's just maybe they expose a different version of the API, an older version to some of the companies that still
Oh, okay.
handles the same old logic, right?
Yeah, similarly there
Idea,
is this kind of I think tiny pesa kuna sijui kama ni kopo. The ones that you are saying then on the source code wanga una change the party B, then there is the account number, something like that.
yes. Mm-hmm.
Now, I understand like for Tiny Pesa, it's like they initiate payments on behalf of other paybills. So there is this kind of a paybill I came across. It's able to initiate payments on behalf of other shortcuts. Like, and it can make payments to either bank, to either, yeah, things like that, to bank pay bills, something like that. So I found it like they normally set or what?
Okay. It's not specific to any application, but I think all pay bills work that way. All of them work that way. Not unless if you are trying to deposit to a bank, we have
Yeah,
bank
I'm
users.
saying
Some of the
like,
bank users, get me right. Some of the bank users have intentionally disabled mobile banking for some security issues. So you can't do that because our mobile
but
banking
unajua
yao imekuwa
kuna
disabled.
these kind of like there are these like for example for let's say equity the 247 which is meant for most of the businesses. So I tried it and in that case it was not able to like for to send to bank most of those common bank pay bills, the ones that are open for many of the customers for bank, but still it was not able to go. So okay, nikajijazia tu ni it's like it's not works, it doesn't work for all of them. Yala. Yala.
Seems like the host has lost. Kama
Oh,
amepotea kidogo.
maybe amepotea.
Mm.
Okay, on the let me share just a few stuff. There is the part of the application alafu kuna msee nilikuwa nimeona ameuliza a question here about
Hello?
hello. You can hear me?
Hello?
Yes, unanipata? Hello?
Hello?
Unanisikia sasa?
Yeah, there's an issue with my mic. Okay, Omai and Rito, I see your hand raised, so you can proceed also. Let's be brief, because time is not. Eric,
Okay, so thank you for the session.
Yeah, wacha kwanza watu waulize maswali. So
yes, Omai, continue.
Okay, so thank you for that good session. I think I have a question, and this question was raised by Mohammed. It was about maybe we can get some ideas on how to work around this. Be a marketplace where you have multiple sellers coming in, and now you want that from the multiple sellers, they will be able to be selling different buyers. Yeah, and when me as a buyer I come to the application, I want to select a certain product and then pay for it. And now that this is a marketplace, I don't want, me as the owner of these markets, I don't want to hold money. So I expect the money to go directly to that seller. And now I understand that you see we can change those credentials, play around with that, but I don't have control of those that are registering to the marketplace as sellers. Because if the seller registers, then for them to receive the payments, I think we need to create a live application for that one. Maybe their till or pay bill must be live. So will we doing this process every now and then to ensure that every seller who has been onboarded to the system requires the live credentials, or how can we go about that? Thank you.
Okay, so I think that depends with your structure of the marketplace. If it's a marketplace where products from different sellers are listed and a buyer can buy multiple products from multiple sellers, then I'm afraid that will not be possible, because I don't know how you'll make that logic of me paying for each product one after the other. But if it's a marketplace where a seller has a unique shop for that, then that's very possible. And the only way to do it is make sure those users have the live credentials. They have that integrated and they're saved somewhere, so that when I'm buying from this shop, I get those credentials and render them inside my application code. If you need to onboard people who don't have the credentials, you can use one pay bill and do two of these things. You can combine the B2C and C2B API, where immediately a callback is received, initiate the payment to the seller's phone number. They have given out their phone number, so that will require you to do two transactions, receive and send at the same time. Or you can go the Tiny Pesa way. Use one pay bill, give you their details, initiate payments on their behalf, but make sure the money goes to their accounts. Yes, drip. Somebody drip.
Mic check.
Yeah, nakusikia.
Okay, so today I created an app. It was a project, but I wanted to integrate M-PESA. So I went to Daraja, created an account, and created a sandbox app. But sijapewa shortcode. I only have the consumer key and the consumer secret. But so far, I've been able to integrate it to my app, and I'm getting the pop-up on my phone, and I'm able to input the M-PESA pin na inaenda. But now the problem is I don't know where the money is going. Kabisa, like I don't know who is receiving it, and 6 bob yangu imeenda bana. Sasa
Okay. Sawa. Nimekuelewa. Kwanza 6 bob yako utaipata within this week, usijali.
Okay.
They'll reverse it back to you. But if you're using a sandbox thing, you don't apply for a pay bill in the Daraja API. So if you're expecting a short code, you won't get it from there. What they give you is test credentials. Whatever you're using are test credentials. So they cannot be giving you money, free money, yet you are testing the API logically. Yeah. So they provide you with credentials where you can handle all your logic. Money goes to their pay bill that they'll reverse after some time. They do reverse sometimes, they don't. But hopefully you might get your 6 bob back.
So the problem is I will be presenting that project anytime this week. And maybe I'll be, want to be bold enough, niambie one of my technical mentors, give me your number, we test. I don't want their 6 bobs to also go zikunywe maji. So do I just not test that part of the app ama niachane tunayo?
You have 2 things. You can borrow credentials at the moment, or the person who is paying won't even realize. It's you who realizes money has gone where you don't know it has gone. But so umelipa and you've received everything on your code base. Like it goes up.
Yeah.
So for your presentation, be rest assured, hawatajua, not unless you mention to them.
Oh, okay. So the solution is I look for someone who has the credentials.
Yeah, somebody who is willing to share with you the credentials, akusaidie when they present.
Yeah.
Ama you just use the sandbox. It still works.
And hopefully my money will be reversed.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
I recommend you use one bob when you are testing. It's not a problem. Again, the application you need to do, there is a link I shared there for the application. In case maybe you need to apply for a pay bill or a buy goods, on the chat section, that is the link that you normally use to make application.
We have karaoke.
So evening to you all.
Karaoke, then Ruben, you'll follow.
So thank you for the session. So actually my question was, I also have a project that is due to be submitted. So okay, when it comes to the sandbox, actually not even the sandbox, when it comes to the logic of applying the M-PESA, the callback URL, am I supposed to be concerned, or we're doing it as a group? So I'm doing the back end of it, and am I supposed to be concerned with the logic which I'm supposed to use, or can I just leave it to the front end people to just think about the logic they're supposed to use? That's the first. And also, when integrating with Daraja, all those the endpoints that are provided, are they like venye amesema like amepoteza, so like our like the TMs tuko now like hadi wao wanajua that pesa ikitumwa like haitarudishwa. One of my TMs actually told me that if I was to integrate this, anajua that if I send the money to the whatever, haitaenda. But so I was asking, is there a way that I can use a pay bill which I can register a pay bill, then your pesa ikuje kwangu instead of just going to Safaricom, then ingoje maybe a week or so a refund? Is there a way that you can bypass that the money can come to me as a dev or someone else?
These are 2 things that I need you to understand, and anybody who has such a concern. If you're testing on sandbox, those are test credentials. That's the flow. The money will go to that test pay bill. The other option is using a live pay bill. That will require you to apply for a pay bill. Application for a pay bill takes not more than 24 hours if you do it right. If you attended my last session, I said that kuna hii tabia ya kungoja, Waswahili wanasema tunangoja maembe chini ya mnazi. You apply for a pay bill, you wait. Mtu anakuambia pay bill yangu imechukua 10 days. Something was wrong somewhere. Reapply for that pay bill. If you apply for a pay bill today, it has taken more than 72 hours, haijakuja, reapply for that pay bill, because chances are something was wrong the agent who was assigned your ticket aliona ni kitu kubwa akaignore ama akaiclose bila hiyo kukwambia. So if it takes abnormally long hours, long time to get for your pay bill, know that you might not get it at all because there's something that happened wrong somewhere and you're not given feedback for that. The only catch for applying for a pay bill is now the requirements, gathering those requirements. But if you have everything right, you have a business registered, you have all those things right, then 24 hours max. 24 hours max. Get somebody from Safaricom, apply, CC email yake, mcall mwambie nimeapply. Hata 2 hours sometimes inatoka. Hii ni Kenya. Yes, Harrison Mwendwa.
Sorry.
I was to go next.
Oh, Ruben, sorry.
Yeah. The first question is a bit about technical implementation. So how can you make sure that a user will not double pay in your application?
Will not?
A user doesn't double pay. Like they pay once, then something like the transaction hangs. They don't know whether is it a success or a failed transaction, so they pay again. I've seen that that thing occur so many times, like people double paying. So how can you make sure that in your application the user doesn't double pay? It's an implementation kind of.
So the meaning that they'll pay twice.
Yeah, mostly they end up paying twice. So
almost immediately.
Sometimes almost immediately. So what they do is they'll pay twice, then later on the confirmation message comes that the transaction was successful, so they have to ask for a refund to Safaricom.
Okay, those are edge cases that you need to handle. I think Safaricom did a good job. You can just do the same implementation in Safaricom wanafanya. If you realize, if you make 2 transactions almost the same time with the same details, the same amount, the second one will pay. So you can do like a kind of a rate limit where just check if this person made a transaction, the previous transaction was for 10 bob and the next transaction for 10 bob and it is almost immediate. Just it's better to reject the second one.
Okay.
So it's just your own logic. You can just do a custom rate limit, just like what Safaricom does, so that you check the credentials. If the same user is paying the same amount at the same time, the same order ID, just ignore the second.
Okay, the second question is, ni hiyo story ya kuapply nini till na pay bill. See, correct me if I'm wrong, is it a must that you have a business ndio apply hizo vitu?
For a till, no. But again, the thing is, if you intend to integrate to a website, the second thing now, you know, there are 2 applications actually that you do when you apply for a pay bill or a till. You apply for the till number itself, and you also apply for admin account creation. So most of the time, these agents create one of the 2. Wanakupea the pay bill number, alafu upati the email that tells you the admin account has been created. So you'll have to reapply for the admin account so that you can go live on Daraja. If you intend to use it just normally for sure, iko tu sawa. You can do it with an ID number. But hii ya pili sasa utabidi umepata the business shortcode, hapo ndio issue inatokea. I've seen people who have managed with the ID number tills, but I don't know how they did it because that business thing is important. In fact, now, I don't think if it's possible. You can get a till without those details if you intend to use it other than implementing it on a system like this. Your till normal tu unabandika kwa duka, mtu anakuja analipa, una confirm message and stuff. But for integrating, don't go the shortcut. Itakusumbua kwa mbele.
So you advise for testing purposes mtu ende na pay bill?
Live ama sandbox?
Okay.
Huh?
Yes?
Testing, you mean live or sandbox?
Like, okay, ulikuwa umesema sandbox sometimes iko na issues, so you una recommend mtu aende na pay bill?
Yeah. Aende na a live pay bill or a live till. No.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Rizwan, my question is on callbacks. So you can find yourself we are working on a solution. Let's say, for example, a redo management system like Bomhat, whereby they sign up landlords, and the landlords then have to give them the pay bills or the till numbers. Now my question is it possible to have one callback which can be used to be recording the payments from all those till numbers from different landlords, or each one of their till numbers to be written its own code?
Okay, for this, if I'm getting you right, you mean the confirmation URLs? Yeah.
Yeah, but also I think it's they are confirmation URLs.
Yeah, you can register. You can use one, but now it's so you'll find a way to identify which pay bill. If the system is one, you use one of them. You can register one confirmation URL to all those other pay bills.
Okay.
Technically, from M-Pesa's side, those are different applications. But since you've provided the same callback URL or the same confirmation URL, all of them will be hitting the same. So it's upon your logic to identify from which pay bill is that transaction coming in, so that you apply the relevant logic on that.
So that is the logic in which they work.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Every message comes with the shortcode. So obvious you can be able to identify the JSON, the shortcode from every message that you get, every JSON message that you get. So you can separate them.
Okay. Thanks for that also.
You hadn't answered my question, like the one before, about using the logic. Should I be concerned as a backend dev that should I implement that logic for only saving the payments and keeping the records, or should I actually be involved in a higher scope as a backend dev when it comes to the M-Pesa integration on my app?
M-Pesa integration is a server-side integration, so the main part of it is you as the backend developer.
Okay, thank you.
There is an integration that's supposed to be done on the front end, but they'll be calling your API. Then you call the Safaricom API. So the whole logic of integration will be done on the back end. The front end will now be calling your. That's why it's very important for you as a backend developer to understand more than even the front end guys. It's you will be directing them that do this, do this, do this. Hit this endpoint, then hit this endpoint, then do this.
Okay, thank you.
Let me touch just a little bit on the part for the application. For you to consume any of these APIs, because like to integrate online, you will always need a business certificate or a company certificate. Because the application for any pay bill or till number that is eligible to accept online payments, you must have those documents that are listed there on the chat section. That is the KRA PIN, the business certificate, or KRA or certificate for a company. Then we have got the letter from the bank, and also maybe we have got the copy of the ID of either directors and so forth. So you need to make sure if you're integrating it for a client, first of all, it's good to ask whether the pay bill, or in most cases, till numbers, most of the people, they normally apply using personal details. But if it doesn't have this kind of stuff, that's when they will ask you to upgrade your till number, so that it can be able to accept for online payments. And during upgrading, that's when you provide the KRA PIN, the business certificate, of which that one you will apply from eCitizen. Then we have got letter from the bank. You can go from any bank, even though nasikianga watu wakisema you can forge, and sometimes it works for some people, because sometimes bank, they normally feel it's like a competition. Then a copy of the ID. And those documents, you normally send them to Safaricom through that email for M-Pesa business. And then they can upgrade your pay bill, so that you can go to the next step of now applying for the administrator account. So without these documents, your till number is not eligible to accept online payments. Yes.
So I'll be sharing some resources on the chat section because we are almost winding up. So the documentations, the tool, and also my GitHub account, so you can check out. There's some 3 or 4 repos there that touch on Daraja implementation, so they might be helpful for some of you who are trying to integrate it.
Alafu Rizwan, kuna this issue about the, sometimes we normally have application which normally have conflicts. So like, for example, if the application is using both the STK push and the C2B, because for the C2B you'll have to register the URL, but for the STK push it means you'll have a callback URL. Now, in most cases, when your application has both and it's registering to the same table in a database, you might find that you might have double entry on your table. So in most cases, I normally feel it's good if you can be able to redirect. If you're having both, you redirect the callbacks instead of creating a callback code. You just use that is, instead of using you use register URL instead of callback URLs. That is confirmation. Sorry, the callbacks, the register URLs are the ones that I'm referring to. The confirmation URLs, so that you can be able to avoid double entry.
Okay, thanks for that. So I think we should be done with this session. I don't know if there is any formality in ending this meeting, but unless anybody would want to pray for us. But thank you guys for attending, and have a good night. You can leave when you're at your own pressure. Yeah, okay, sorry. There's a hand from whoever has the handle for Speciatech.
Yeah, my name is Fred Ouko, the founder of Speciatech. So Rizwan is a personal friend, as a close friend, and so it was such a very informative session by Rizwan. He did a similar one last year, and the recording is on YouTube. And so when we called upon him to do another one, he graciously accepted. And I know there's so many people who have benefited from this session and who are going to become better engineers and better integrators just for this. So thank you so much, Rizwan, and thank you so much for the audience. That's my kid. And we really appreciate the audience so much and the questions that you have asked. And we are going to have more sessions like this. So at your request, if you have any resource that you are requesting for, anything that you want clarification on, documentation, whatever it is, Speciatech is ready at your beck and call. Also, Mentalist is our platform through which we do this. So just make sure that your profile is up to date on Mentalist. Hit mentors like Rizwan up for anything. You can even text him right now. The chat feature is live on Mentalist, so you can even chat among each other. So thank you guys so much, and thank you Rizwan for so much for this session. And we are looking forward to another one. Asanteni sana guys, and have a good night.
Okay, welcome. Now, that we're looking forward for another one. Maybe the 50 people who are remaining here might suggest maybe if you'll need any other session apart from the Daraja implementation, we can find time and do it. Because one thing about me is that I normally tend to create problems for myself when I'm writing code to understand what happens when this happens. That's why if I kind of integrate something to my applications, I find that I kind of try to handle each and every edge case that might arise as I am working with that thing. I'd like to maybe have another session for USSD integration, because